Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Cultivating Human Capital from Workforce to Community Partnership session. My name is Jen Lehmann, and I'm a consultant project manager at the Center for Transportation and the Environment. I also work on the Zebra project that has been mentioned a couple times at the conference today. So if you're a trans agency and we haven't chatted yet, feel free to find me during the lunch reception. So I love this topic today, and it's focused on people. This is one of the most fun sessions for me because a lot of times you get so wrapped up in the technical details, the processes, the technology, but the impact really comes down to what today's presenters will be focusing on and showcasing really is the outreach, the workforce training, the communities, the kids, all of the people that are actually on the ground. So we have 4 amazing panelists, and I'll introduce them and then we'll jump right into the presentations. Our first presenter will be Nicole Wong. She is campaign manager for Green for All DreamCorps. And I also asked them all for a fun fact so that you could bond with them as we're having lunch later or as you network. And Nicole's fun fact is that she really enjoys singing in her free time. And then our second presenter will be Landon Hilliard, and he'll be talking about the Boulder Valley School District. His fun fact is that he not only gets to work in the zero emission space for work, but he actually has his CDL, so he can drive the zero emission buses. And if you were out in the parking lot yesterday, he drove that bus down here from Boulder. And then our third presenter will be Xinge Wang, and she'll be talking about zero emission buses are here. Are the technicians ready? And her fun fact is that less than 1% of non-Chinese speakers can pronounce her name right, and many colleagues still mispronounce her name after decades. And so she even told me that the way that we pronounce it isn't what she would say back home. So she's been generous to us. So thank you for that. And then our final presenter is Kameale Terry, and she'll be talking about ChargerHelp and how you recreate the business. She's CEO of ChargerHelp, and her fun fact is that she is the oldest of 3 brothers, but each of them stand at over 6 feet tall. So in reality, at 5'1", she's their little baby. So remember to input your questions into the conference app, and we will have all the sessions recorded once the conference is over. And I'm just going to jump right into it to Nicole to talk about Equitable ZEB deployments.
Hi, everyone. As Jen just mentioned, my name is Nicole Wong. I'm a campaign manager with Green for All, and we're a program of the national social justice nonprofit DreamCorps. So I'm really excited to be here with you today and with my fellow panelists to talk about how to ensure equitable zero-emission bus deployment. So quick note about who we are. Green for All, as I mentioned, is part of a national social justice nonprofit, and we were founded in 2007 with the goal of advocating for a green economy that brings better jobs, health, and opportunity to disproportionately impacted communities. And we do that through a number of ways. So that's through policy advocacy at the state and federal level. We also do strategic communications and education, and then convenings, bringing unlikely allies together to tackle shared problems. So I'm going to start off just by offering a little bit of context for the why of the work that we do. As you all are acutely aware, our transportation system is utterly essential. It's essential for communities to reach key destinations, including school, work, and other services. It's the backbone of our economy. And yet, historically in the United States, the burdens and benefits of the system have not been distributed equitably. So through discriminatory land use and transportation planning policies, including redlining, including just the construction of our highway system itself, what we've seen over time in the US is a concentration of pollution and poverty in some neighborhoods and access to resources and wealth in others, including access to quality transportation. And so low-income communities and communities of color are hit hardest by transportation pollution and also climate change that's spurred on by a transportation system. And so this is the context within which we do our work, and it continues to guide us. So I lead our Fuel Change campaign, which is focusing on bringing cleaner cars, trucks, and buses to communities most impacted by transportation pollution or who might lack access to quality mobility options. And so over time, Fuel Change campaign's done a number of things. We've trained more than 500 folks on how to use our Take Action toolkit to advocate for electric school buses in their districts. And through that process, basically learned that folks are on board. School administrators, communities, et cetera, want to see these buses in their communities, however, face challenges when it comes to technical questions and also funding. And so Green for All has been engaged at the federal level trying to advocate for increased funding for zero emission bus deployment. So really briefly, I'm just going to touch on what do we mean when we say equity. As you can see in this diagram here, equality is oftentimes referring to providing similar or equal inputs, right? So the same exact bike, regardless of need to various individuals or communities. But equity, on the other hand, is thinking about tailored inputs, tailored solutions and policies to achieve equal outcomes. So a definition I really appreciate from Greenlining Institute is thinking about how are we increasing access to resources, to power, including decision-making power, and then how are we actually lowering barriers? So one way in which we think about this in the battery electric bus space or fuel cell bus space is in deployment. So where are the vehicles going and where are the dollars going? So one example I want to point out is in California, the California Energy Commission's school bus replacement program. Starting in 2018, basically they were allocating funds for school districts to transition their diesel buses to zero emission or low emission. And ultimately, they used a ranking system, a scoring system. So school districts who are applying would be ranked according to, the age of their diesel buses, the eligibility of that school district for free or reduced price meals, and then also the score, the Cal EnviroScreen score that they had in that area. So if you're not familiar, Cal EnviroScreen is a mapping tool that California policymakers use to identify which communities are most impacted by pollution. So as a result, 90% of the 235 or so diesel buses that got transitioned, that transition happened in low-income communities and quote-unquote disadvantaged communities. And that was, in big part a result of this scoring program. The thing I would mention here, though, is it's really key to be very, very targeted in the way that priority communities are defined. If you use too broad of a definition in some of these policies, you risk actually watering down the impact. So for the Clean Commute for Kids Act, which has been introduced in Congress, 40% of funds are set aside for environmental justice communities. But that definition is actually so broad, our team was able to realize that actually 90% of school districts would qualify. So we're really thinking about who, in fact, is actually benefiting at the end of the day, and are these the folks who need it the most? Something else I want to point out is just how electric bus deployment can support high quality jobs, both in manufacturing and in charging infrastructure. So the first piece here is just thinking about how are we protecting existing workers and preserving jobs. One example here we can look to is in Montgomery County Public Schools in their contract with Highland Electric. As you all might know, right, it's the largest electric school bus procurement contract in the country. And they actually included language in their contract that would protect workers. So if there is interest in diverting workers, basically there would need to be written notice, justification, submission of alternatives, and actually written consent. Something else I want to point out is just how battery electric bus deployments can actually incentivize equitable jobs in the supply chain. So I point out here the U.S. Employment Plan. It's a policy tool that Jobs to Move America has pioneered and essentially would embed strong labor language in the public bidding process. So cities, states, and transit agencies who are interested in procuring these buses can actually require manufacturers to indicate what are the jobs that are associated with that procurement? What are their salaries and benefits? And how are they planning to train marginalized workers? I'll leave workforce development to my fellow panelists. And then lastly, just want to touch upon the importance of centering the voices of communities who are most impacted at the end of the day by these policies, by these buses, and by the cleaner air. So that includes transit riders, it includes students, it includes teachers and workers. And one example I can point to is in Boston. So for the Massachusetts Bay Transit Authority, recently legislation passed that would establish a permanent board to oversee decisions coming up. And one of the board members must be from an environmental justice community, another a labor representative. And so we think about it, right? These are folks who have an ear to the ground, know what are the impacts to their community, and can help shape, for instance, which neighborhoods are going to see zero emission buses first. So in sum, Ultimately, we know that a huge opportunity lies ahead of us when it comes to transitioning the majority of our currently diesel buses on America's road to electric. That being said, it's really important to center equity in these policies to ensure that we don't exacerbate current disparities, and then also promote really strong access to opportunity, both when it comes to cleaner air and health, and then also to better jobs. Thank you so much.
Well done.
Thank you very much, Nicole. What a great way to get the session started. Nicole's going to be followed by Landon talking about the Boulder Valley School District case. Come on up, Landon.
Thank you, Jen. And yes, Nicole, that's an excellent lead into what I'll be speaking about. My name is Landon Hilliard with the Boulder Valley School District. I work just up the road in the city of Boulder, and I'm here to just tell you a little bit, maybe a vignette about how we acquired one electric bus, which happens to be the first operating electric school bus in the state of Colorado. We all know the value of partnerships and collaboration. My message basically is about the power of partnerships and the fact that they're priceless for putting together a package to electrify a fleet. So I'd just like to tell you a little about our school district, what we believe in, and then the alignment of funding and policy and technical support. And then I'll show you a picture of our new bus that arrived with a wrapper on it, with a bow on it in March. So the Boulder Valley School District is that orange wedge, and the star is Denver. So we're about 35 miles from here. We have 56 schools, and including students and staff and then parents, it's like a micro urban or entity of about 75,000 people. So that's our audience. It stretches across 9 municipalities, 500 square miles, and that's our fleet composition. Do you see the one shining example of an electric bus? Represents less than 1% of our fleet, but we're moving towards there. The capital improvement program, which is $750 million, is important because in the last 5 years, it's allowed the school district to adopt electric vehicles and infrastructure across about 90% of our schools, not for school buses, but for workplace charging. So we believe as a school transportation department that it's most important to transport our students in a healthy way and have them arrive ready to learn without tailpipe emissions and breathing diesel fumes. We think that their head will be that much more clear. We also in the Boulder Valley School District have a strong sustainability program that's been going for about 10 years, which has policy written into it to electrify the fleet and clean the fleet. Okay, here comes the partnerships. This is a little jumbled, but the idea here in this story is that the partnerships go across the board. They have to do with government at different levels, local and state, and of course federal. They have to do with consultants who have the technical advice to usher in this kind of thinking. They have to do with vendors who sell the equipment, who have a vested interest, of course, in selling the equipment, but also believe in electrification. And so a couple of years ago, this group called RMI, Rocky Mountain Institute, if you haven't ever have a chance to work with them, they're a think tank that actually calls themselves a do tank. And they brought together a group of us from the city of Boulder, these partners below, to think through what fleet electrification would be. And the result is that we have one electric bus in the school district, but the city of Boulder is acquiring them via Mobility, which is a service provider is acquiring them. The University of Colorado Boulder is. And then Denver Clean Cities is a outfit through the U.S. Department of Energy. It's now called Drive Clean Colorado. In my haste in making the slide, I forgot that. They are an advocacy group that has tied together a lot of this effort. And again, it's part of the power of partnerships. And then most recently, this group led by the city of Boulder, the University of Colorado Boulder, but with the city of Boulder and Boulder County and others, is coming together to think how we can, in our region around Boulder, start fleet electrification. The notion, of course, is a united front is much more powerful than an individual effort. Funding, thank goodness, is flowing. You all know about the VW settlement, and Colorado received a great share of that. And then our funding source in this state is the Regional Air Quality Council, which is a part of the Colorado Energy Office. And there have been flush funds for fleet electrification. As you may know, there's a premium on an electric school bus, about 3 times the cost of a normal one. So almost $350,000. Without the financial incentives and support of the Regional Air Quality Council, we couldn't make it happen. This last group I mentioned, it comes with a funny name of Mountain Mamas. They are a group of mothers who care and want to electrify fleets for clean air, for health, and for the future. And this group is pushing policy at the state level to open the floodgates for more funding. Then our electric service provider named Xcel Energy is also a partner around technical advice and around financial support. Recently, a $110 million electrification plan was approved by the Public Utilities Commission, and that will be going into fleet advisory services, make-ready infrastructure, and even $1.4 million to buy school buses to spread the wealth across the state. And then it's worth mentioning policy support. Without written statements of interest, things don't happen. So this is always the bedrock. Colorado produced the electric vehicle plan in 2020. Boulder County has a similar something. And then moving further down, our own school district has a sustainability plan that has to do with or has elements of reducing carbon dioxide and carbon emissions. And then this is the final slide. This is our beautiful bus that arrived in March. Do you see with a bow on it? My colleague with the bells. And this fleet profile is in our dreams. From 0.5% to 50% is a long way to go. We're moving on that path towards our dreams because we were recently awarded $1.6 million through the Regional Air Quality Council to buy 5 more electric buses. So with 6 battery electric school buses, we'll be up to about 2%. So again, the message is there's an alignment of policy and financing and powerful partnerships that are allowing, in our case, for the adoption of electric vehicles. And California, of course, is far ahead of us. New York State is ahead of us, but we are doing what we can through the power of partnerships. Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Landon. I love to see all the partnerships come together and really support the community. These are so inspirational. Our next presenter is Xinge, and she's going to be talking to us about the workforce development side of things. So please come on up.
Wow, Landon just set a very tall standard for me to catch. So my name is Xinge Wang, and that is the real pronunciation. I won't drill you on that, though. Good morning. I want to thank Dan, Lauren, and Jen at CTE for inviting us to discuss this very important topic, arguably the centerpiece of the ZEB puzzle, human capital. To give you a sense of my presentation, I'll first provide you with some background on the International Transportation Learning Center and the recently established Transit Workforce Center. I'll then discuss the training and skills gap during the implementation of ZEB, and I will land on some industry-wide solutions and actions that I'm hoping all of you will partner with us on. So the International Transportation Learning Center is a nonprofit based in Silver Spring, Maryland, just inside the Beltway. And we are the only national transportation labor and management partnership that focuses on frontline skills, training, research, safety, and health in public transportation. And our model is really based on stakeholder engagement. We work with labor and management at many agencies on the map, over 80 of them. And we work on career pathways programs, bringing kids from high school and community colleges into the transit careers, and also apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships, once they are in the workforce, to bring them up to speed on all the skills required. So the National National Transit Workforce Center is something that FTA just announced last month. We received the award, and this would be FTA's first National Technical Assistance Center to really help agencies recruit, hire, train, and retain a diverse workforce needed now and into the future. And I'm really glad to share that the TWC has opened its doors officially as of 2 days ago. So this is the first industry conference that we get to announce this. And I hope I'm loud enough for you to all hear that there will be a number for you to call and an email address that's posted on our website. And in the future, we will also have all the infrastructure set up for a help desk, for online resources, courseware and best practices, train the trainer, mentor training, and most importantly, a cadre of subject matter experts that will provide all information and assistance, workforce development related. And you can imagine that preparing our workforce, especially the frontline workers, for the ZEB deployment will be one of the top priorities of the TWC and FTA. So now back to the ZEB discussion. There's at least 3 levels of training a technician would have to go through in order to become competent in ZEB maintenance and repair. At the ground level, we have electrical and electronic principles, how to use digital multimeters, DC, AC, and also Ohm's law, all the basics. Then you move into ZEB familiarization, usage of PPE, safety protocols, high voltage, battery storage systems. And at the highest level, we have OEM-specific training that a lot of times includes proprietary technologies, that black box some of you refer to. So where are we in terms of workforce readiness when it comes to ZEB deployment? We at the International Transportation Learning Center have collected some firsthand information from transit agencies and frontline workers on just that subject. And one large agency that will go unnamed here estimates that only 1 out of 7 bus technicians can currently use a digital multimeter. And that probably is a shocking number for you, but you can have a mind check of where your workforce may be. And when a group of frontline worker representatives at ATU were asked, do you feel your maintenance and operations employee members are adequately trained to work on ZEBs? A whopping 83% of them said no. So these results give you a hint of what is and isn't being done by agencies across the country. And obviously there are lots of constraints, funding, resources. And the transit workforce is understandably concerned about the new electrical equipment that are on these ZEBs, going from traditional low voltage bus electrical systems to, potentially life-threatening ZEB electrical components with up to 800 volts creates a very, high safety concern, especially when the existing training on ZEB is somewhat insufficient. So we would argue that dependable, well-maintained ZEB fleets are only possible with the accompanying investment in human capital. And this initial investment is as important as the purchase of the fleet because it keeps workers safe and also makes sure that agencies can adhere to service schedules. And the truth is, agencies don't have to reinvent the wheels when it comes to at least the first 2 levels of ZEB training. There's a ton of materials on basic electrical, electronics, and all we have to do is really making them more engaging, more interactive, 21st century. And we can use learning technologies like e-learning, virtual learning, blended, augmented reality. So there's also a lot of commonality in training programs on ZEB familiarization. We at the ITLC have recently partnered with multiple OEMs And we developed 3 virtual learning sessions targeted at frontline technicians. And they were very well received by 500 technicians, logging in from all across the country. Under the TWC, one of our tasks will be to convert these sessions into a generally applicable course, complete with hands-on guidelines and also assessments. So my last slide is really the meat of my presentation. I probably only have 1 minute for that. We know there are great efforts going on across the country to bring technicians up to speed. Some you have already heard from other sessions, but we see a lot of potential in bringing all these partners together so we can work on industry-wide solutions and avoid duplication. Funding is the first piece that needs to be in place. The good news is the infrastructure bill that is currently moving through Congress includes dedicated funding for workforce development related to ZEB. 5% of the ZEB funding, which is $5 billion a year, will need to be dedicated to workforce development, such as apprenticeship and labor management partnership training, and that's an estimated $250 million a year. Agencies can use RFPs to set standards for quality and quantity of ZEB training, and the rest of it you will have to read. And I promise I will be around after this to share additional thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Xinge. I love it when there's a big reveal. And I will also just echo the 3-part online training that she had about the high voltage safety training. That's something that a lot of agencies are looking for, and to have that available to everyone online is pretty incredible. Our last presenter is Kameale, and she's going to be talking to you about a bit of a different business model. So come on up. Also, a friendly reminder, please enter your questions into the app. It helps us with the discussion after. Thank you. Did I do it? No? Oh, I see what's happening here.
At ChargerHelp, we are setting the standard for fixing electric vehicle charging stations. And we're doing it 2 really cool ways. One, we're utilizing technology in order to enable on-demand repair of EV charging stations. And 2, we're providing real green jobs to folks all across the United States. The great thing about the ChargerHelp training is that it's only 3 weeks. The first week, all of our technicians get their safety license. The second week, we teach them the ins and outs of open charge point protocol, which is just the language that every single charging station speaks. And in the third week, we bring them all here to our headquarters in Los Angeles to give them the opportunity to meet with our customers in order for them to get hands-on training. We don't have to do any other training after that because the ChargerHelp app enables all of our technicians to know exactly what to do when they go on site.
Here at ChargerHelp, we're really interested in creating close partnerships with our customers. Because technology is evolving so quickly over time, it's important for us to be on the bleeding edge with you so that we can quickly resolve issues, whether that's hardware or software.
What we are really excited about here at ChargerHelp is our technicians and our team. Our technicians start off at $30 an hour. They receive full health benefits, and most exciting, they get shares in ChargerHelp, the company.
I think it's kind of wild that I didn't really understand work-life balance, and so I started making a middle-class income. And so one of the things that is able to happen when you make good money is that you have time to think about your body and your mind. And so at ChargerHelp, we not only pay an equitable wage, but we want to introduce our employees into ways that they can take care of their body and mind, because we're more than just a paycheck, more than just fixing charging stations. At the end of the day, and at the center for people.
It's been really welcoming and fun. Had a lot of fun getting to know everybody. Different personalities are bringing out different parts of me, and I really love that. And getting to know the background of everybody and what they're bringing to the table. It's really fun to find that camaraderie with everybody.
We're committed to ongoing training, ongoing collaborations, so that we can all achieve more and provide the best quality and service and safety that the industry has ever seen.
We're really excited to share this with our technicians. We really believe in equity and not just having good folks work for us, but being good employers and providing for our employees. So if you're planning to be a part of the ChargerHelp team, you can look forward to good pay, good people, and a good time.
I always feel like that laugh is on like cue. It's so good. Good time. Laugh, laugh, laugh. It's so interesting. So I don't know what's gonna happen here. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, it's so interesting. So I had dinner I was at a table with Lauren Justice from CTE last night. And she asked me, what did I feel about the event? And I was like, I've been so inspired. My background, I used to work for a company called EV Connect. We developed software for electric vehicle charging stations. I was driver support. So anytime an EV driver or a site host or a bus transit agency had one of our little charging stations and had an issue, I was the voice that they got to speak to. I learned a lot. Thankfully got to hire for that position and grow with the company. So I was able to stand up our call center, our driver support center, our customer experience department. I set up our network operations center. In my last role, I was director of programs. And so my team was responsible for the infrastructure build out here in the US underneath Electrify America and a lot of utility programs. And one of the things that kept coming up for us was that the stations were having non-electrical issues. So it was communication issues, it was software issues, it was firmware issues. And if you use the open system, you consistently get issues because there's multiple software that has to speak to one another. And so I really start to think about, two things. One, how do we develop a workforce that can go out on site and troubleshoot these things? Someone that is, okay with getting dirty, but that can plug a computer in. My dad owned a company. He was a network operations manager with computers. And he used to take apart cars before. And he's like, he went into computers because he didn't want to get dirty. So I was just like, okay, so I have to find somebody that can do both. And up until now, we really haven't had that type of workforce. And so when we went out to really think about how do we build ChargerHelp, my co-founder and I, we wanted to do two things. The first was that we wanted to ensure that the folks that we had taking care of the stations were well taken care of. And so I titled my speak here, Redefining Good Business, right? Because when we talk about frontline workers and field service representatives, we always really, they're the ones that are overworked, not paid well, and not taken care of. To me, my favorite word is, that's weird. It's really weird that the person that goes out and interacts with my customer is the least paid and the least taken care of at my company. Like, that is not the way that we should be doing business. And so one of the things that we do at ChargerHelp today is that we pay a minimum of $30 an hour. All of our technicians get healthcare benefits that we pay into. All of our technicians get shares in our company because we're a technology company. And then the coolest part about it is that today, we started in January 2020. We have 32 employees. We keep about 20,000 charging stations aligned across the United States, and we're only going to triple that by next year. And what we're really seeing this opportunity for the entire industry is to really reimagine how we support human capital. Like, we have a really, really neat opportunity to reimagine what it looks like to work for a company, to take care of the people that are taking care of our customers. And so super excited to be here, very inspired to see all of you and just your dedication to moving this industry forward. And thanks for having me. And I got the 1 minute on time. Yes, thank you, Jen.
Thank you very much, Kameale, and all the panelists. I'm going to do one last call to enter questions into the app. and get us started with one. So in this space, we're definitely climbing a bit of a mountain trying to get to the tipping point. And so it's kind of a two-part question. Do you feel with some of the examples that you shared today that you've reached a tipping point? And if so, what was the action that you felt like pushed you over the edge? So I'd like each of you to take an answer at that one.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, so for us, we're, when people think about technology companies today, a lot of times they think of like the Uber and Lyfts of the world that did a lot of damage to human capital. And I think that ChargerHelp has been able to reach the tipping point because we are a technology company, extremely well-funded, venture-backed, and we're still profitable and still doing well. So I think to me, like that is a huge tipping point for the industry, that you can still be a technology company, still be venture-backed, solve a real problem, and take care of people.
And what specific action like made you feel like you had met the tipping point?
I think welcoming in our technicians. A quarter of our technicians are ex-oil and gas. They come from factories that have been shut down. They come from communications that got let go. And so I think seeing that in real life was definitely the moment that's like, oh yeah, we can do this thing, and we are doing this thing.
Yeah, amazing.
Okay, I can refer to a minor tipping point, not the tipping point, but the fact is that because financing is necessary for electric school buses, the financial people of administration need to appreciate that and approve the funding. So the fact that our chief financial officer gave a big green light to the purchase of 5 new electric school buses, which have a value of 1.6 million, and the school district will put up about 300,000. For that is a minor tipping point.
Thanks, Landon. Nicole or Xinge?
Yeah, so I had this presentation actually presented 2 years ago, and the title was Zero Emission Bus Are Coming. Now they are here.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see the federal level investment through the infrastructure bill, $5 billion. That is, how many times that we're getting through low no right now. And really paying workforce development, attention to workforce development because of a lot of the effort from us and also our partners from the union side to push for dedicated funding. And I have also seen a lot of the efforts from ground up on the West Coast, East Coast, trying to set up regional training centers. But we need the national effort to come together and define all the training standards and the skills, the competencies first, in order to move towards that final destination of either a certification or apprenticeship to qualify all the technicians.
Yeah, I can speak to this briefly. So in terms of a tipping point, when I'm thinking about equity in the context of zero emission bus deployment, I'm starting to think about policies that are really intentional about dedicated investments. And so we're starting to see this come up more and more, like if you've heard of the Justice 40 initiative and really dedicating 40% of funds at the federal level toward communities most impacted by pollution and transit inequity. I think we're starting to see this become more and more common in terms of dedicated investments, but there needs to be a lot of planning on the front and back end to make sure that it's truly reaching those who need it.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm going to stick with you for a couple of follow-up questions related to centers of equity and other disadvantaged community decisions. So you talked earlier about how a lot of times you're not really making the impact where you need to be, that the definition is so broad, you really need to focus in. So one of the questions that our audience posted is kind of what strategies can agencies consider to center their equity decisions when sometimes the technical capabilities are driving where the buses are deployed, whether it be range or other factors?
Yeah, this is an excellent question and one that I'm learning a lot about at this conference. I think a big piece here is engaging impacted folks. So really making sure that there are conversations that are had that are representing, yes, what are some of the challenges technically, but then also where is there room for basically greater investment. So yes, I think the technology is gradually improving. And also, how are we making sure that we're actually bringing in communities who are living, for instance, near ports, near highways, into the conversation, so that when future planning makes it possible for bus deployments to be more widespread, that they're actively helping shape the outcome.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add on to that? I want to make sure that we have an option for everyone to respond if they have additions. We're good? All right, then I'll move along to the next one. There's a couple questions in here about, are there efforts toward certification programs? How do we overcome the lack of trainers since this is such a new technology? I feel like Kameale and Xinge, maybe you might have some good responses to those ones.
Yeah, one of the things that, to the first question in regards to just the lack of trainers for new technology. So with what we do with step one is just a lot of the issues that you see, the error codes are not defined on like how you can solution for them. So even if you had a train the trainer model, there's not really much you can train that person on, right? And so what we've done with our platform is that we bring in the error codes, aggregate them against all the manufacturers and software providers. So then we utilize technology to start tracking where the solutions actually are to eventually get to a place to predict it. So my technicians, when they go on site, they're using our mobile app, and depending upon that error code in the manufacturer and the previous information, it produces a workflow for them. And so they're interacting with the workflow. So, okay, I need to do this, I need to do this. Okay, that didn't solve that. All right, let me call the OEM. Okay, and then we're recording that conversation, bringing that conversation in to then see, okay, how are they solutioning? How are they solutioning? Okay, that's now the solution. And then our system automatically brings it in, and then next time they go out, they'll be able to solve for it. So I think that we have to open up our imagination a little bit on how can technology really help people, right? Because what my technology can't do is talk to my customer that's annoyed with my OEM, right? A good technician can do that, but my technology can be able to allow my technician to solve that problem in real time. So I think that in train the trainer model might just be the first step, but I'm very interested to see, especially with the work that we're doing in other companies, is how then do we use technology and machine learning and a lot of these things to help us solve some of these issues, so you don't have to send somebody to school for a year or 2 years. You can really do on-the-job training, like in real life, and it's wild. And then the other question was
the train the trainer, and then the certifications.
Certification. My co-founder is literally amazing. And so the first thing that she actually worked for the Department of Labor for the last 10 years before I convinced her to leave her great government job and join a startup. Got her paid the next year, so all's well. But one of the first things that she did was she established our technicians title with the Department of Labor's ONET system. So our certification, when our technicians come, EVSC maintenance technician is now actually identified by the U.S. Department of Labor. So that way it creates a set of qualifications. So if they ever leave ChargerHelp, right, then they can go somewhere and they can say, this is the things that I did, these are the learnings. And that was a big deal for us. The other thing that I did was create a troubleshoot curriculum for EV operation and maintenance. And that's in the final phase of being certified by the Department of Labor. And that will be taught at community colleges. Like, we didn't need to hold on to that. Like, everything that we're doing, there's so much money to be made. We're not trying to capitalize on information. So that's why we're disseminating it out into, the US, so more people can build on top of it. So it's coming. I guess that's the short answer.
So I'll focus on transit buses and technicians for the transit agencies. There is currently no national certification for ZEB technicians in transit. There is a generic certification pushed out by SAE that is touching on, mostly zero emission vehicles, but it's not bus specific. So our goal in the next year or two is to set up some sort of a certification program, and you can also call it a registered apprenticeship if we get to the point of registering with DOL. And that certification will cover everything starting from basic electrical electronics to the fundamentals of ZEB and all the way up to troubleshooting and the high level skills. So very much something that we have to work with all the industry partners on, because as I said, there are separate efforts right now, and we need to first define those national training standards and then make sure that we are filling courseware and curriculum based on those, and make sure that we emphasize hands-on learning, like Kameale has talked about, mentorship, and yeah, in terms of the lack of trainers, talk to the OEM and see if you can steal some of theirs. I don't, we do provide train the trainer, but a lot of it is on soft skills of, how do you actually deliver classroom and hands-on learning. As far as the ZEB technologies itself, I think a lot of it has to be partnership between us agencies and the OEMs, because again, it can be proprietary information, and we just have to break that barrier somehow.
Thanks. There's a couple questions for each of you just about, like in one case, how can ChargerHelp come into their community? Or in the case of the workforce training that's coming up, and kind of building off what you were just saying, Xinge, how do we actually make sure that the training materials meet the needs of what the agencies actually are using? So maybe, Kameale, how would people have ChargePoint come into their communities?
Well, I would love to be a part of ChargePoint, but no.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. ChargerHelp. I'm so
that is
sorry.
I
You know
know
what?
great company, and yes, now we have been a synergy. Thank you.
Yes. No, ChargerHelp. I'm so sorry. It's just the mind does silly things up here.
No worries, you're fine. I wanted to say something real quick about the train the trainer with the OEMs. Is one of the things, like, as you're looking at RFPs and policy work, like, it has to be baked into the RFP that training is going to be mandated. So we do a lot of policy work specifically on the charging station infrastructure, where we're requiring, right, that these manufacturers have some type of training that's available. So if you are close with the folks so on your policy teams in your state, it's something that we have to start talking about and advocating for, because they will continue to say that it's proprietary, but if it's broken, they're not going to send anybody out. So I don't know, like, there has to be a solution there. But in regards to getting ChargerHelp, so we work directly with manufacturers and network providers. Those are our customers. We recently started to go out to work directly with fleets. And we train now our technicians on the buses, on the charging stations, and the solar, because all of those have software. And so one of the things that I remember the first day, the guy here had talked about that BYD was providing a lot of their warranty right now when they had software issues, but the warranty is about to run out. And so that's where we would be able to step in directly with folks to take over some of the things that BYD was doing on the software side. So working directly with us usually comes from the manufacturer or the network provider, but we are interested in conversations on how we can support your current workers, because we don't want to displace workers. We want to make sure that we're upscaling your current workers, and if there's additional need, what we've done with a lot of partners is then supply dedicated technicians to your site. So then you can have a ChargerHelp person that wears your agency's uniform that's there all day. So for instance, we've done that, bidded on that with Volvo trucks, where we have 2.5 people that are dedicated to each site location. So that way you have 24-hour coverage. So we'll be here, definitely interested in exploring these different models. But the last I just want to harp on is we don't want to displace people. We want to be an additive, and we want to help support, right? Because I think there's much opportunity for everyone to be successful right now.
After you.
So I want to first echo Kameale's petition for everyone to use RFPs to not only specify the quantity of training provided by OEM, but quality, very importantly. So you want to specify the time, the topics, and the training aids, whatever tools may be needed, even PPEs, and make sure that you hold them accountable. I think there are some OEMs here, and it is, I'm sure, part of, your responsibility, and you feel from your heart that you want to do a great job in training. So, and I want to say that we have worked with a team of industry experts to put together some recommended languages for agencies to customize and insert into their RFPs to specify training. So that report is coming out in the next couple of weeks. As far as getting ground level training to your agency, I think it's important to be connected into this network, and we're hoping to set up something that may be called a National ZEB Training Consortium, and we're hoping all agencies that are deploying or thinking about deploying will be joining that. So at least there will be a lot of national resources, curriculum, courseware, e-learning, and advanced technologies utilizing learning that you can take from the shelf, and we will help with customization. And then, utilizing the 5% that you're going to be getting from the infrastructure bill to actually deliver the training. So that's my short.
Landon, did you want to add on?
Jen,
a
yeah,
little bit?
just in the school bus environment, this conversation underscores how new we are to training and understanding the technology. So just a couple of quick anecdotes. One is we received our bus in March, which means it has a 1-year warranty. So our technicians can do what they can, but anything around high voltage, anything that has a red or orange sticker on it, they stay clear of. We haven't figured out yet what will happen come March 2022 when the warranty expires and they need to go to work. The second part is that as far as certification goes, at least in the state of Colorado, the Colorado Department of Education is the regulatory agency that certifies our technicians. And this new bus, and as if you know with the school bus, every bus has to have a pre-trip that goes through an emergency brake test. An electric bus isn't able to do that because a brake test, just in brief, is leaving the emergency brake on and then revving the engine to a certain RPM to see that that brake in fact holds. However, in an electric bus, it can't be done simultaneously. The result was the Colorado Department of Education sidelined our bus for 2 months to think through how a brake test could be performed on an electric bus. That's how new the school bus is to the state of Colorado and most other states, and to think through how to train and how to meet regulatory guidelines.
It's great to be on a panel like this, then where you can kind of see some of the conversations and help develop that. I know, Landon, you're kind of leading the conversations here in Colorado. I'm going to switch over to Nicole for a couple of questions. There's one for you about specifically with California moving towards all zero emission vehicles. How do you see that changing your company and your program? And then kind of adding on to that, have you all done any research about the risk of increased gentrification linked to greater investment in these technologies in a previously underserved community? So just kind of what do you see coming down in the future?
Yeah, of course. So Green for All, even though we have an office based in Oakland in California, we're part of a national nonprofit. And so California is not the only state we work in. We know that California is leading in a lot of these policies when it comes to, bus electrification, truck electrification, and so on. But, are engaged in other states on the East Coast and elsewhere. But I will say that even though California, is leading on this front, has specific requirements and mandates in law regarding electrification, there's still so much work to be done when it comes to implementation. And I could potentially see sort of there being a role for us there on that side in guiding that and engaging impacted communities on that front. But yes, we are not just engaged on the bus front. We're also sort of working on trucks, and there's room to continue to push in that area. And then regarding the other question on gentrification, this is such an important question. And I wish I could point to a specific report right now that ties together the impact of bus electrification and gentrification. But I think that we can sort of look to just historic impacts, honestly, of just transportation system improvements, even something like, for instance, the expansion of existing railways and bus systems and how that has impacted low-income communities of color, and think about sort of what are the lessons learned from those specific instances, and how can we make sure that with new programs that there are, for instance, community benefit agreements in place or other policies to make sure that ultimately the burdens of a new sort of shift in the transportation system don't fall in a way that is uneven.
For this next question, I'm going to pose it to each of you to respond, please. So the audience picked up that funding is critical, but there's a question about what specific focus areas can, say, state governments or transit agencies, kind of what can they really focus on where public dollars would have the most impact as we look at this topic? So where's the biggest impact for public dollars?
Yeah, the biggest impact is going to be operations and maintenance, right? So a lot of utilities put out their pilot reports in the last 5 or 10 years, and they were seeing that 30 to 40% of their infrastructure was inoperable due to software issues. And a lot of times those RFPs that they had put out didn't include operations and maintenance. All of the funding was set to installation. So when after the station got installed, then the warranty ran out, then there was literally no money to maintain it. And when you even look at the infrastructure bill, we're consistently combining installation, operations, and maintenance. And then you do have a lot of OEMs and folks that will, put in bids that covers all of that in the installations in the OEM, but not the operations and maintenance. And so I think that we really want this to move forward, and even specifically for y'all's industry. You can't have down stations. We had one of our customers that we ended up working with Fleet. They're like, yeah, we talked to our OEM and said, it's a 48-hour response time. He said, that's ridiculous. I'm gonna have a station down for 48 hours, right? But it's because, no one has put pressure to us. So I think the biggest bang to our buck is going to be to really think about how we want to do operations and maintenance. And then how are we going to hold, these folks that are making a lot of money off of this industry, how are we going to hold them accountable? Because now we're affecting like the entire like public folk, right? So yeah.
Well, I just love everything you just said. Focusing on the 90% of our transit workforce, which is operators and technicians. And historically, the investment in human capital on the transit side has been focusing more on the so-called white collar workers and not the hands-on frontline, blue collar workers. And I think, since our session is on human capital, all of you apparently care about it. So while we're, infusing a large sum of money into that physical capital, let's make sure that we have investment into human capital to support the long-term success. Instead of, 5 years later, finding out that we didn't act when we should have, and now we're catching up again. We're going to have a state of repair, a state of good repair problems, and lagging behind on everything.
I'll echo what my fellow panelists have said. Really investing in people and workforce training opportunities is really key. And just taking a step back, right, from zero emission bus deployment, continuing to invest in quality transit service, period, right, is just going to be really critical. And we know that sort of we've seen historic investments in this federally over the past year as we come out of the pandemic. It'll continue to be crucial, not only for, reaching sort of these goals around reducing greenhouse gases and increasing, access to quality transit, but also making sure communities are going to continue to be served. So.
Because I'm at the end of the line, I've had a chance to think about this, and now I have too many responses to give. So I need to distill it into one or two. I guess I'll start with the fact that you may know, and I just learned yesterday, that the school bus industry is humongous. 25 million students ride a school bus to every day in this country. The problem is 95% of our school buses are diesel. 4% or almost a 5% are propane, so fossil fueled. So there is a student health, public health kind of lens in which we can see that. So my answer might be federal money can recognize the public health benefits of electrification and work from different sources of funding to support students, not only just for efficient transportation, but for their health.
Amazing. Thank you all. That actually wraps up our time for this morning. Thank you all for sticking around and asking such great questions. As you can tell, this topic is deep, and so hopefully our panelists will stick around if you have individual follow-ups you'd like to chat with them about. A sincere thank you to each of you for preparing your slides and sharing your stories with the group. The next thing is lunch, which will be upstairs outside in the plaza area. So please join us up there and give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you all.